So we're going to start with asset protection. And on the asset protection front, I want to start by basically identifying what type of risk issues we're dealing with. And when we talk about risk, just think about where it comes from. Because a lot of you will think, oh, you are the source of risk. And that's true. Things that you do create risk. But it's not just the things you do. It's also the things your spouses do, the things your business partners do, the things your employees do, and even, dare I say, the things your children do. Because you are vicariously liable, or in other words, liable personally, for the actions of these other persons who are related to you. And in that regard, of course, we use trusts to manage the risk. And what I'd like to do is to just go through and show you a couple of risks that I've seen over the last couple of years that have knocked my socks off, that I've thought, wow, that's a bit of a disaster. And hopefully these will hit home with you guys, because it's so important that you perceive risk. Even if you're in a very solvent position, even if you're high net worth, there are left field things that can happen to you, and if you don't have the right structure, you can lose the assets. So this was actually a client of mine. He came out of a Rich Mastery Academy, and he came to see me in 2005. He was a pilot. And he told me about a very unfortunate experience he was having, and that was about 6 or 7 years prior to I met him. He built a house, and it was a nice house. His father-in-law, in fact, helped him build it. His father-in-law turned up, nailed up all of the frames. His father-in-law left the site. He then finished it, put in the cladding, the roof, the lining, etc. Finished it, lived in it for 4 years or so, moved out, and then lo and behold, the house emerged as a leaking house. Now, the interesting thing was 10 years liability under the Building Act, so he was liable. Even though he built it as a residence, he wasn't a spec builder or anything else. He was the builder on site, or he was assisting the head contractor. He was held to be personally liable, but amazingly, his father-in-law, who knocked some nails into some wood, he was also held to be liable. And the court apportioned liability across everybody, even though they didn't necessarily have any proximity to the damages. You know, nailing nails into framing has hardly got anything to do with the cladding system, one would think. So just think about that. That could be you. You know, you build a house. Another example is, and it's something we talk about a lot, and that is drinking while in charge of a vehicle. Okay, very poor judgment if you do this. But let's say it's your spouse that does it. What effect would it have on your asset base if your spouse was one glass of wine over the limit, and then someone drove a new high-value vehicle into your spouse's vehicle while home? And we've talked about this for years, and in fact it was last year that it finally happened. One of our clients had this happen to them, and they were driving down the road, poor judgment for doing this, so a bit over the limit, and someone drove into them in a new Mercedes and wrote off their Mercedes against their car. So our client had not actually done anything wrong with driving the car, other than be in the wrong place at the wrong time and do something very silly, which is drink and drive. However, they did have a judgment awarded against them for the value of the Mercedes because they were breathalyzed over the limit. So have a think about how that would affect you if you lost $300,000, or maybe it was a more expensive vehicle, say a Rolls-Royce, $800,000 or $900,000, and that vehicle drove into your spouse when they were in those circumstances, or you, or one of your employees driving a company vehicle, because you're vicariously liable for the actions of your employees to your business. For many of us, that would be a significant loss.